Person, Jeff Mason, and Tara Palmieri. Ken, you were out in Jersey yesterday. You saw the president, where, Bedminster?
That's right.
Any news from your conversation?
No news, but he was watching the Women's Open, like millions of other Americans, and I think that's what people don't get about why this president resonated. Is he's a normal person. He watches golf. He enjoys it. He connects with people. People come up to him for an autograph or a picture, and he connects with them. And that's what we in the media just can't get through our heads, is that people like him.
Maybe we need to see that more often. Maybe better access for the press would allow us to see that side of him?
Well, you just described how he came to the front of the plane and spoke for an hour, and the aides were all saying, let's make this off the record. And he was saying, no, let's make it on the record. I think he's quite accessible. He talks to everybody. People come up to him, and to the degree with modern security that you can be, the guy just really connects.
Well, on this subject of access, the question I wanted to ask in this segment was whether the White House briefings are officially a waste of time. And this gets into the issue of access and answers from the White House. Whether the briefings are off camera or on camera. This week they were entirely off camera. We're also not getting a lot of answers to questions that are asked. Here's an example, actually a series of examples, from Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders answering questions with a non-answer.
I'm not aware of that, but the State Department would probably be best suited to answer that question. I haven't had a chance to dig into that, but we'll certainly circle back with you on it. Again, I haven't had a chance to have that direct conversation. I've been a little preoccupied with other things major, but I will certainly check on that. I'm telling you, I'm just not sure. I don't know the answer. I'll have to check and let you know.
So an update now on access. The president's not had a formal solo press conference in 4 months, actually 5 months at this point. But it was accessible to reporters on the plane, as we were talking about. He also sat down for an interview with Pat Robertson for the Christian Broadcasting Network. He took questions from a Reuters reporter, and he had this joint press conference in Paris. He did surprise people by calling on a Chinese journalist instead of an American journalist when he had the chance. So we're talking about the various degrees of access. Back now with Jeff Mason, who's the head of the White House Correspondents Association. Certainly, Jeff, you're about to hand over the reins to another journalist who will run the group of the association. But you've been pressing for better access, trying to get these briefings on camera. Is there any indication that's actually going to happen, or is this accepted now that the briefings will usually be off camera, not allowed to be televised?
Well, it's not accepted by us. We're certainly continuing to push for that, and I have no doubt that the next board will continue to fight for that. I mean, it's very important to the members of the White House Correspondents Association and to White House reporters to be able to ask those questions at the daily briefing. You asked whether the briefing is worthwhile or not. I think it's important, whether or not the answers are satisfactory to the American public or not, that chance to ask those questions and hear the answers from the representatives of the American people's elected officials takes place. So, and we think that it should be done in a way. And if there's a mix of, sometimes it not being on camera or televised, and sometimes being televised, a mix is okay. But the trend of all of them not being televised is not something that we, as the association, are in favor of.
Is there anything more you can do?
Well, we can keep pushing for our rights that we believe are protected under the spirit of the Constitution and the First Amendment.
Hasn't worked yet.
It hasn't worked in terms of the trend that we're talking about. That trend is not going in the direction that we want, no. But we are an organization that represents television reporters as well as print reporters, radio reporters, online reporters. We have a lot of interests that we have to represent. And the White House also is working on its own calculations about how it wants to deal with the press. So it's a sometimes slow and sometimes unsatisfactory process, but we're working hard on it.
Ken, do you agree or disagree? The White House briefings, are they a waste of time?
I think they are a waste of time because they're so canned. I think that it's, the reporters come, I really believe that...
Isn't that the fault of the Trump White House? If they're not answering questions, that's not the reporter's fault.
All right, so the idea here is that the media has become the opposition to Trump. I mean, just listening to the intro to the show, just listening to the intro to the show, listening to Fareed's show before it, it's no longer that the Republican point of view holds forth and the Democrats hold them accountable and the media covers it. It's that the president and the White House put forth their point of view, the media argues with them, and the Democrats have become like totally irrelevant to that discussion. It's a stunning thing to watch unfold during this presidency. And I don't know if
the
it's
irrelevancy of the Democratic Party?
Totally, and the way the press has assigned itself the chore of undoing the results of this election, which they simply don't accept.
Who do you think has assigned themselves that? There's not some secret cabal of people in the journalism world.
Did you read the New York Times editorial page at all this week? Do you see even David Brooks, the faux conservative they've got in there, says, I brought somebody with only a high school diploma to work, and insensitively she couldn't pronounce the sandwiches.
Okay, and then it was a stupid column. What's that have to do with the president's lies and misstatements?
Let's rate how bad all of the president's children are. I mean, one of the president's children is 11. These are the people we're rating for how bad they are. These
are people paid to have opinions, just like Eric Bolling or something.
I'm talking about a newspaper that holds itself out as the most dignified place for American thought and journalism today, and this is what they put forth. It's unprecedented. Whether you agree with it or disagree with the point of view, I'm saying there's something in the air right now that makes these personal attacks, these relentless, ongoing attacks, palatable to the American people. And I think the shame of it is we no longer have even a two-party system, which many think is too few. We have a one-party system, and the media is the other party.
You're talking about editorial people, though, people that write opinion columns for a living. The New York Times reporting staff has been breaking stories left and right, holding Trump accountable. You think that's the opposition?
I think that they've been breaking stories like crazy. The Washington Post as well, and the Wall Street Journal got into the mix in a big way a couple weeks ago with some important stories. And I think that's a critical function of journalism. But I think that the way, during these breaks, when I watch you go on Twitter, the way journalists reward each other for stabbing and needling, there's a new system of reward that is out there for journalists that has very little to do with policy and very little to do with advancing this country.
When the president says things that are untrue, should we sit here and ignore it?
No, you should report it. You should hold him accountable.
Then where do you go from that to the media as the opposition?
Because when I look at the tone and the way these attacks are launched, and I cited a couple examples for you, or the way that whenever there's a need for the appearance of balance, NPR will hire some conservative who hates the president, or the New York Times will go get Bret Stephens, whose main contribution is that he hates the president. Whenever there's the need for the appearance of fairness, there's no real effort to where are the pro-Trump journalists in the mainstream media? They don't exist because the entire mainstream media is against Trump, and that I think is not just bad for American policy. I think it's bad for journalism.
I think a lot of journalists are against lying, against deceit. That's where we are right now.
I'm against lying and deceit. I think that the function of the journalist to hold the administration accountable is a critical function enshrined in our Bill of Rights. But when you have a system where the most outrageous attack is what's rewarded with likes on Facebook and followings on Twitter, you're setting yourself up. No, it's not just opinion columns. It's reporters, and they audition for each other and they audition for popularity.
Let me get Tara Palmieri's reaction at Politico. Tara Palmieri, Politico, also a CNN analyst. Your reaction to Ken's comments?
I think as a print reporter, it doesn't matter to me as much if it's on air or not. But I do know from some of the White House officials that I've spoken to that they think by taking the White House briefing off camera and just in voice, it brings down the temperature. They think there's a lot of grandstanding going on both ends, but also if they say something damning, there isn't a clip on the internet and on all the TV shows. I think at the end of the day, we're supposed to be balanced. We shouldn't be pro-Trump or anti-Trump. We should just be all about the facts and the issues, and I think that there is a prerogative to say, oh, they're being anti-Trump. No, we're being critical. That's our job, to be critical, regardless of who the president is.
And Jeff Mason, last word to you. Tara said earlier in the hour that a staffer of the White House once threatened to kick her out of the White House Correspondents Association, to go to her editor. We went to your editor and said that, right, Tara?
Yes.
Am I getting that right? So, Jeff, your point you wanted to make was that the association itself never heard that from the White House?
No, and I appreciate your giving me a chance to say that. We've obviously had times where we've disagreed with the White House and they've disagreed with us, but that's never something that anyone from the White House has ever asked me to do or approach the association about.
Lots to discuss here. Thank you all for being here this morning.